And I gave them 4 points, something like that, that we might ask. And John Grabowski,
Yes.
maybe you have some thoughts, and maybe some people have some. But here's the thing I said I would like them to think about, and we can start in order if you did that. One of them that just hit me was uncertainty. That word comes to mind.
Ah, thank you, whoever did that.
Uncertainty, your fear, your self-doubt. How did you deal with it when you were like these young actors, and how do you deal with it today? Does it still go on for you?
It's like
These are not going to be your typical.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
He said it's like blissful ignorance. You're meaning when you're younger, right?
Yeah. I think it's like allowing yourself to dream and letting. For me, it was like knowing or just trusting that I had like a network of people that would help me out, and as long as I sort of kept trying, that would be it. And in the uncertain period, the network of people were the people I would call, like my mom, my dad, my best friend, and they always had. I'm lucky. I've had a good network of people to help me still to this day. So that's kind of what kept me going. What I meant by blissful ignorance is just like there's a ring out there and do what you can to grab it. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Years later, after I started acting, I read a book about the business of acting or something like that, and in the beginning it was so discouraging, and it was basically saying if there's anything else you can do that you like to do it because the odds are and the this and the that and it was so negative. And then it said, and if by the end of this chapter you still want to act, blah 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 blah, and I was like, that's totally useless information to me. Like statistics and odds and all of this. I don't believe in that stuff, and I didn't believe in it then. And I just knew that this is what I love, this was my passion, and I didn't want to look back and have regret and say I never did anything about it. I never tried. That to me is a bigger failure than not trying. And so, so for me, those statistics mean nothing to me, and so there's sort of like a blissful ignorance. I mean, I've always had fear, a lot of insecurity about, whether people think I can act or not, if I'm doing a good job, those kinds of things. And I still deal with it. But one of the ways that I deal with it is to be as prepared as I can. As prepared as I can in an audition, as prepared as I can at a job. Because the more rehearsed you are, the more practiced you are, the more confident you will feel. And so that's one of the ways that I've dealt with confidence and fear. And then therapy. I've done many years of therapy. Worked on a lot of things about my childhood. Still a work in progress. I've done all of those things, and I'm still to this day. I started doing some yoga and some meditation, and that's one of the things I'm doing these days to try to keep my mindset in a good place, because, for me right now I'm in between jobs, and it's such a weird headspace to be in, because for so many years I was so used to going for the job. I was always on the hunt, get that job, get that job, get that job. And it was a big dream of mine to become a series regular, and I did it. And then like the first year of the series, I was so used to being in that get the job, and I was like, well, I have the job. Now what do I do with myself?
Do the job.
Then I had to learn all these other things on how to do the job and how to be in the public eye and all that other stuff. And then it's just funny, it's just become this kind of thing, this kind of journey. And so now I almost feel like I'm back where I was, where I'm like, okay, get the job. But it's a weird space, because I kind of accomplished a major thing that I wanted to do, and now, so it's still dealing with confidence and fears and all that. So.
Right now, you guys are dealing with a lot of television and film work that you have done, but I recall, Otto, as soon as I think your time here at the studio was finished, you did a lot of plays.
Yes.
A lot of plays. You even wrote a play that's been published. And you kept doing one play after another and kept yourself active.
Right,
And Andrea, I'm not sure immediately after whether you did. I remember you came back, when we moved into this space, you came back to do landscape of the body, which was...
Yes. Well, I mean, I
you
was
did
a theater
as well.
major for 4 years, so I did a lot of plays there before I came to the studio.
Yes.
And I do want to say that I really think that it's important to study and to practice even after you've, quote unquote, graduated from college, whatever. So now you guys are leaving this program, but it's going to be important that you continue to work, that you continue to be in class, you continue to, auditioning is practicing and doing all those things, because you got to practice. Just like a musician or a dancer or whatever, you're not going to be good if you're not practicing.
It's sort of like going to the gym.
Exactly.
You get in shape, and then you think, okay, I'm in shape now, I don't need the gym anymore. No, you're going to go backwards.
Right. I'm having a memory right now.
You are.
I've been in class with you. And it's really funny. May I tell it?
Sure.
Okay. So I was saying, I graduated from a 4-year program, and then I was actually like a professional actress. I was working on One Life to Live. I had done this heavily recurring role for like 2.5 years. Who'd have thought? It was supposed to be a 4-month role, and it turned out to be 2.5 years. But anyway, in the meantime, I knew that I still needed to practice, that I still needed to learn and get better and all this other stuff, so I enrolled myself in James's class, in their program, and John and James's class. And so we were doing an at-the-door exercise, and the scenario was, and it was my best friend Dahlia, who's in LA now. So we were supposed to be sisters, and she's on the inside, and I'm on the outside of the door. And the circumstance was that I was a drug addict and I needed to get my drugs. And I had apparently had an affair with her husband, and she just found out. But I didn't know that she found out. So, you come knock on the door, and who is it? It's me, open the door. No, go away. Come on, open the door. And so the job was that I had to convince her to open the door. Well, it got to the point where I was like, Talia, open the door, come on! And then I hear the footsteps come up to the door, and she goes, you know what you sound like? One of them soap opera actresses. Oh, you bitch! You fucking open the fucking door! So I went from this, I went down here. And that was actually really great. That was a great call on him. So what happened was, she opens the door when the exercise was open, and the first thing that she says out of her mouth was, Andrea, I didn't mean it. James told me.
I call it as I hear it.
And so I went, oh, really? She was, it wasn't me. But the lesson in that was that he was right. I was up here, totally fake, not connected, an idea of what I thought this should be and what the scene is supposed to be, and not really living in the moment truthfully and really reacting to what I was getting. Was this fucking bitch was not opening the fucking door, goddammit. So that was the reality, motherfucker. I gotta get my drugs, And so that was great. That was a great
That was
lesson.
your habit in the realm of soap operas. They didn't require much from you.
Yeah, it was like 2-pound weights.
Our habits.
Yeah.
So we were trying to change the habits of that.
And it was great. It was a
came
great
back
lesson.
Also, and you did landscape of the body so beautifully here, and even the accent and everything. Even John Ware came to see it. He always liked it. So
Did he really?
Yes, he did.
How did I know
Rich
that?
Schneider, Schneider said that. He ran into him years later. He says, I came and I saw
Get outta
it. He
here.
says it was quite good.
The playwright. Wow.
Yes.
Okay, there you go.
One of the questions I asked was about your drive or passion, the amount that is needed in this industry to succeed.
That's a tough question. I mean, there's no. I don't know if there's a way to. There's a certain level of insanity I think you need, I guess I don't know how to answer that question other than it's kind of like what she said just about 5 minutes ago. If you get to the end of that chapter that's telling you all the reasons you shouldn't be an actor, and you're still like, no, I still want to do it, then that's sort of your drive. And that's when you realize, I think, that this is something that you want to do. Going back to what you said, I also wrote a mission statement saying like, I don't want to be, I'm 47 now, I don't want to get to 40 and like be so old and look back at my life and think I'm a failure. So that was one of the things that I drove, but I'm about to blow you up real quick because like you're in a classroom situation right now, and what I loved about our class is like there's always like the really good people in your class that I'm telling you now, you should always steal from those people. The great thing about class, and this is answering the question, is like we're artists, so you watch the people that inspire you and you steal from them. And you were in the class ahead of us, so like you guys were like, whoa, those are like they're in the scene study classes, you know, we're at the door knocking and they're like doing plays, like, right? And so Navedo, you and I forget the other two women did that one scene.
The Vanities. That was Dahlia and Josanna.
Oh yeah, okay. So we came to see that. We were the younger class. We came to see these three women blew it up. And here's what I was learning. Here's the stuff that I was stealing from you and from all of them. And we did a play. We did a short together. I remember that, right? Mm-hmm. So here's where I'm about to give back. Like one of the reasons that kept me was some of the advice that you gave me at the end of the play. Because she's like my elder in the school, not necessarily older than me, right?
I am, but anyway.
You know, okay, whatever. I watched that show, and you had this, everybody was really funny. You had this really funny moment where you were like the stiff, stuck-up one, and you never drank before, and then you finally took a drink, and then in the middle of it, you burped, right? And what I loved about it, it was like, all the stuff that you would say to us about, like, being in the moment, preparations for the first moment, and there's, like, all these moments in between the lines. So it's not just about like doing lines, it's like what's happening to this person. So I realized in that moment, all of the school that I've had, right? You did that burp, you took a little drink, and then the whole audience is waiting to see how she reacts. And then she burps, and everybody falls out. And I was like, oh, from the technical standpoint, right? She has built a character that from the beginning you're watching, so you don't know what's going to happen. And so when she does something that makes sense for her character, and she waits and she's listening, there's something amazing about it. And it was one of the things that I absolutely loved. The other thing was, there was a moment at the end of our play, we did this, I forget what the play was, The Bear or something. Yeah. Chekhov, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was like a moment where we were trying to work this moment out, and you were like, well, let's do something, right? And I don't know what it was. It was like I shushed you before. It was like we were having some kind of argument, and I shushed you. And I know this is confusing, this doesn't make sense to you, but like the notion of two actors before going on stage trying to figure out how to work a moment, and then coming up with what we were going to do and then doing it on stage was something that I have used for a long time. Because again, it taught me the lesson that it's not just the line, I'm not just waiting for Andrea's line, I'm actually living in the moment, right? And all that stuff that you taught us, I mean, you're not going to learn it until you start to apply it in real life. So I've always wanted to thank you, like 800 years later, for like that moment. Like I was like, oh yeah, Andrea, your voice, yeah, that was great.
Interesting story, and that was Vanities.
Vanities, yeah.
And I cast you all opposite your types, because I knew it would be somewhat of a challenge. And I said, if you remember, I said in one class, I said, this Saturday, I want the three of you girls to do a sleepover and become best friends.
And that's what it was. That's what it was.
Our best friends
to
like
this day. 23, 24 years later.
Wow.
And interestingly, their lives followed the characters I cast.
I know. It was so funny.
You know, that was
so true. You've always been so insightful. Yeah. You can really, really read people and situations. So, yeah, right on the money.
The next thought that I brought up was mask versus the truth. How or when do you need to mask your true feelings in this business, and when to express them?
I mean, most of the time you're bullshitting,
So you're doing a lot of masking and stuff. You have to get along with it.
Yeah. I mean, I've learned that your reputation precedes you in this business, and And something I always want to tell younger actors, like if you're starting off and you have like a little guest part or whatever, I always want to remind people, especially guys, acting up. I'm like, the operative word here is guest, not star. You're not a star, you're a guest star. You are coming to somebody else's house. These people have been here. Stop acting like an asshole, because everybody remembers. And speaking of the Coda show that I just did, there was a guest star coming on. The show is about Marines. He gets cast as a Marine. He doesn't want to cut his hair. He's holding up the entire regular series cast. I'm standing there going, what are we waiting for? The whole cast is here, and the one guy with 2 lines is making an asshole out of himself in the hair and makeup trailer. And so everybody is getting called, the AD, and then the casting director, and then the producers, all because this guy won't get a haircut. So either you knew you were doing this part, why are you here, right? And so he eventually gets a haircut, but like everybody knows his name.
Nobody's gonna
Cast him,
He
right?
doesn't play nice.
Yeah, he doesn't play nice, and it's not about rolling over and playing dead or being a doormat, but it's also just realizing where you are. You know, you have a job to do, and knowing what that job is, and as when you're coming up, you're supporting her cast. You know what I mean? So that's the thing that masking and not masking. It's about being real and having home training, just knowing how to act in a room, kind of thing.
And
Yeah.
there's a common sense.
Common sense, yeah.
Common sense, and I mean, I want to jump onto that a little bit too, because I agree with you, being a guest on someone's show, and I think on the other way too, I think at some point, if you guys get to be, the series regulars or the stars of the show, number 1, 2 on the call sheet, I think how you treat the people who are your guests coming on to your show is really, really important, and sets a tone, and it sets a tone for either negativity or positivity. And I think it's really important to do that. And that was one of the things that we did on Jane the Virgin, was actually working on the pilot. We really had a good rapport with each other as a cast, and we were like, wow, we're really getting along. We have this chemistry. Wow, this is really awesome. This is so fun. And so we said, well, if we get picked up for for a series, let's make sure we keep this going. Let's make sure we make our guests feel welcome, because we know what it's like to be a guest on a show and to feel like a prop, or to feel like we have something to offer and something to bring to the table. So I've had those experiences as a guest on different shows. And so I said, let's be the people that make people feel welcome, that make people feel important, that we appreciate them and all that. And so that's what we did for all 5 seasons. We always made sure that all our guests felt welcome. We went up to them, shook their hand, how are you? Very, very friendly. But on top of that, we also made our background actors feel very, very welcome. We always kind of like stopped when we had a big background cast. We would, at the end of the day, either Gina or I will stand up and say, hey, background actors, we really appreciate you. We couldn't tell the story without you. We're so grateful for you to spend all these hours with us all day, blah, blah, blah. Those kinds of things, and I think that's really important. So what's come back to me on several times is that people would say, oh, Jane the Virgin, we hear it's the happiest set on earth. Oh, we hear it's so fun to work on your show. Blah, 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 those kinds of things. And then one more thing. I talk to a lot of different people in the industry, and what ends up happening is, let's say they're considering you for a role, they'll start getting on the phone and calling people and saying, do you know so-and-so? Is she fun to play with? How is she? How is he? Blah, blah, blah. They will vet you. Because if they have to spend so many years with you, they want to know that you're not going to be a problem. So that really does happen.
It reminds me of a story a few years ago when you came back to do a play here you produced for Chelsea Repertory Company, and we wish we had done a vetting of a certain actor.
Oh,
we did
yeah.
that after the problem, but that
It was a learning
good
experience.
I
I don't know what we learned, but anyway.
This is just the best moment so far in your career, or the worst, and the worst moment. And you don't have to answer. Behavior. John, you have a question?
No, I think you hit all the bases.
Well, I'm
Okay.
going to answer that question. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I can talk all day. No, the best and the worst part or moment in my career was the same thing. It was the day that I decided to quit acting. Do you remember I told you?
Yeah.
You know, I had had children, and I was very focused on them, and they were young, and I didn't want somebody raising my kids. I wanted to be home with them. That was really, really important to me. I was like, there is nobody gonna be raising my kid. I'm gonna teach them what they need to know. So that's how I felt about it, and so I was very, very focused on them, but because of that, there would be auditions and things that would come up that would potentially take me out of town, and I was like, I'm not going with kids. No, I'm not going somewhere, you know, out of New York. And so I would turn down a lot of auditions, but because I wasn't practicing, because I wasn't in class, because I wasn't working on my craft, I really lost touch with that part of myself, and I became very engrossed in being a mom. And I started to get really, really depressed, and I kind of had like a stinky attitude, and every time my agents would call, I'd be like, oh my God, you're calling me to audition. Oh, I don't have time for this. I gotta do this X, Y, and Z for my kids. So this is how I was thinking. That's to the point where I really lost my passion. I didn't feel it. I didn't have it in me. And one day my agents call. It was in December, and they said, hey, Andrea, we just want to let you know that your contract is up and we're not going to be renewing it. And I'm like, why? And they go, because you haven't earned enough money. And I was like, oh, okay, so we're no longer representing you. And I hung up the phone, and there was a part of me that was like, oh my God, I totally expected that phone call, because I had manifested it through my behavior. And the other part of me was like, motherfucker, holy shit, I can't believe that just happened. It's so fucking hard to get an agent. What the fuck? So I went like through this crazy time. It was in December, which is already can be a depressing time of the year. I went into a very deep depression. And then a friend of mine, Anthony Marinelli, some of you might know him, called me in January to say, hey, Andrea, I'm going to be producing this play, Frankie and Johnny, and I would love for you to play Frankie. And I was like, sorry, Anthony, I quit acting. And he's like, what? You quit acting? You can't quit acting. I'm like, I did. I quit acting. My agent just dropped me a month ago. I'm not doing it anymore. He goes, oh my God, don't tell me that. It makes me so sad. So he goes, look, just read this play. Just read this play, please, please, please. Long story short, I read the play, fell in love with it. I was like, oh my God, I have to play this role. If I don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. Then I'm going to show up to the play to support him, and I'm going to be sitting in the audience going, God damn it, I should be up there. And so, long story short, I made it happen. My husband, I had to convince him to get on board because there were these very salacious sex scenes and things. And then I had to get babysitting in place, and because it was like 5 days of rehearsals and all this other stuff. Wound up doing the play, found myself again, literally cried after the first rehearsal, like, oh my God, where have you been? I forgot all about you. And we did the play. I invited my agents. One of them came. I was like, oh, she showed up. She came to the play, and then I said, I want to have a meeting with you. And she goes, sure. So 2 weeks later, come into the office, I say, she goes, what do you want? I go, what's up? And I go, I want to be a signed client again. And she goes, no. And I'm like, no. Because I thought, like, she came to the play, so she's still interested in me. She goes, no, Andrea, you have to work 10 times harder than when you first started in the business. You have to want it more than I want it for you. And so I said, you know what? That's good. You know what? I would take it for granted if you just said, yes, I'll show you. And so she started sending me out freelance. The first thing she sent me out on, I booked. And the second thing she sent me out on was a series regular that winds up flying me out to LA to screen test. Didn't get the role, but before I got on that plane, she was like, Andrea, we want to sign you as a client. And so a month later, after that meeting, I was a signed client. And so the worst and the best day of my career. I'm sorry, I'm talking too long.
But I remember you called me once and you said you think you had lost your passion for acting, and I said, well, sometimes it goes away, but it can come back.
And you were right. Remember I tried to give you all my theater books?
Yeah.
I tried to, but I never did. I packed them. I had all these plays and speech, blah, 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 and I put everything on the, I'm not acting.
Just to add one thing, because we have had lots of students who've gone through, and many of them were in their 20s, like Andrea, but when they got through with the program, they put acting away. It didn't happen the way it does for some actors, but now I'd like to say in the middle part of their life, they're back, they've been working in the lab, and they are starting to get work. And they're working in regional theaters, and they're getting television work, and they're getting, it's starting to happen, so you never know when it's.
Yeah.
Some right as soon as you break out, it happens, and some people have to work.
I mean, I'll tell you.
Otto, when you started really hitting the bigger stuff, they said you were an overnight sensation, and you said, the hell with that, I've been at it for 20 years.
20 years, yeah, 20, now it's like 21, 22, yeah. So, I mean, it's a journey, it's a long process. Like, I mean, being on set, I'm sure this happens to you, where, you know, somebody comes up to you and asks advice, and they say, do I want to be an actor? I've seen you on this and that. And I say, you're looking at 20 years, right? I mean, acting studio for me was 98, 99, you know what I mean? I got my first, like, legit job 2003, maybe, and it's been good for me, but it's been a long time, and so that passion has to be there, and yes, it ebbs and it flows, but for me, it's also like living other parts of my life. Like, I can't ever be a 24/7 actor, because I know those people, most of them live in LA, and it's a maddening sort of way to live, because I can't always be on. I have to like date, I have to like do other things. I have to do things that aren't for acting, like play guitar, not because I think I'm gonna get a part as a guitar player, but like this is what I wanna do. And that like helps me also build stories when I'm able to act and when I'm able to work. So for me it was, I started off trying to be that 24/7 actor. And if you are, that's cool. If you can keep that going, that's great. But like, I realized that I wasn't going to last 20 years if I'm running this marathon like it's a sprint. You know what I mean?
And the other thing I wanted to say was that it takes time to really get good. And I don't think I'm talented. I really don't. I think I learned how to act. I think I learned. I got a skill. I learned a skill. Maybe I have a little bit of sensitivity or intuition or something that helps. But I've met other actors who I think are naturally talented, and I know that's not me. I know that I've had to work so hard to be good. Because like when I think about where I was when I first started acting to where I am now, it's such a difference. Even if where I was 5 years ago before Jane, like all that experience I got on Jane, it's a big difference, and it's the practice. So you know, it's putting the time in, logging in those hours.
I wouldn't say not talented, it's an ongoing development as a human being and a process. And I've come to this but conclusion at this point when we talk about maybe Al Pacino, who I like watching his work always, and Meryl Streep, that we always say, oh, they're so talented. I think they work and put in much more hours of work on their work than other people do. So I try to encourage all of my students that, look, you're just as talented as them, but it does come down to your work ethics.
Meryl, I know personally.
Yes,
I mean, I've worked with her and I've watched her on stage, and she works from day one of the rehearsal and closing night. She's still working on moments. She's still like figuring things out, and it keeps you on your toes because you're like, oh, what's she gonna do now? Okay, you know what I mean? But like, and it's not for her own vanity. It's because she actually wants to try to figure out that moment, and it frustrates her. And I think that's the thing. It's like she knows, and I don't know her personally, but like I've talked to her a little bit. But she, like that's her passion. She loves telling stories. And she can't stop, and it's all inside her. But yeah, she's been working since Yale, and all the people that I know who went to Yale, and all the super famous actors that we know worked with Leo too. Like Leo's been doing it since he was like 16, and so he talks about his mom driving him around LA, going to auditions as a child actor. Do you know what I mean? And then he got Titanic, and all of a sudden everything went amazing for him. But like those cats have been working their butts off since they were young. you know?
I tell my students what you shared, the stories you shared when you were working with Meryl Streep in Mother Courage. That Otto, she was making her return to the stage. She had been away for a long time. And he had a scene that was almost 8 minutes long, just him and her. I mean, you know, that's a dream come true.
Yes, yeah.
And you said she was always the first to arrive.
Yep.
And the last to leave.
Always.
And you said like clockwork, she would knock every night on your door to run lines.
Run lines. And I'll be like, okay, Meryl.
You're gonna say no to Meryl.
Yeah, she was inspirational, like going back to what you said, like she also showed me, and let me sound douchey for a second, like how to star in a show. Do you know what I mean? Because she didn't walk in like, I'm Meryl Streep. She was like, hi, I'm Meryl, because she knew that even cynically, all of these people are supporting what she's going to be doing for 3 hours. So I better treat you well. Do you know what I mean? Because the better you are, the better I'm going to be. Now, she is naturally a nice, generous, giving person, but like, she showed me like what it is to carry a show. Because it's only her on stage for 3 hours, and the rest of us are supporting her, but boy did we have fun on that. And that was because Meryl was awesome. I've been in this opposite situation when Mr. or Mrs. Superstar is an asshole, and that kills it kills your ability to even sort of approach somebody and have an idea. Meryl is open. Oh, you want to try it this way? Cool. And you're like, but you're Meryl Streep. What do you want to do? You know, because she wants to play with you. And you're like, oh, that's what you're supposed to do. So again, that's another person that taught me without knowing she was teaching me. You know what I mean? Like you. So.
Okay. And then just parting advice.
It's a marathon. Yeah, I got an agent early, and like I told you guys the story. I mean, it's a quick story, but like I thought I was going to get my Academy Award within 6 months of getting the agent. No, do you know what I mean? The other thing is like, again, like maybe you are that like not flash in the pan, but maybe you are that lightning in the bottle that like right out of acting school you get Lord of the Rings and then you're super famous, but for the most of us, and especially like all the people that we see on TV and movies now, like we said, they've been working. And they've also been developing all of these relationships, right? With the casting directors, with the producers, with everything. I bet it's the same for you, but like a lot of the jobs that I've gotten is because somebody picked up on the phone and said, like this Ato Essandoh guy, how is he? Oh, he's cool, he's great on set, he's prepared, he knows his stuff, there's no drama, do you know what I mean? So like, it takes a while to build that trust with the industry. Like the casting director, think about a casting director's job. Her job or his job is to bring in the best actors for the writer and for the producers and for the directors. She doesn't want to bring somebody in who's going to make her look like an asshole because Martin Scorsese is going to be like, why are you bringing me these actors who are like falling apart, right? So that's the more you go into that office though, that more that casting director looks at you and goes, every time you come in, you're really good. You might not be right for this part, but they will keep calling you in. Like that, I am proof positive of that. I sometimes, most of the time, don't remember the casting director's name because I met him or her 10 years ago, but I'll walk into their office and be like, yo, you remember when you came here for what? Don't remember, right? But like once you build up that reputation, and hopefully you're a little talented as well, right? They keep calling you. So, because the casting director wants you to work, because it makes them look good, right? So, the more you make them look good, the better reputation you make for yourself.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, there's no overnight success, really. It just doesn't really exist, and there's no getting discovered. It's more about the work that you put in, and coming at it from different angles. So, you know, speech work, physical body work, you know, mindset, planning and organizing. How are you planning your day? What are you doing today towards your goals today? Making sure you're in acting class, showing up for those rehearsals on time, prepared, to class prepared. You know, carrying your own weight and setting the tone and setting the example in wherever you go. That you mean business, and I'm serious. This is what I do, and you mean business. And you carry yourself that way, and you talk to yourself that way. this is my business, this is what I do.
Make friends, not enemies.
Yeah.
Would you mind if I got a photo of the,
Sure, yeah.
the cast? Would
Yeah,
you
yeah,
guys
yeah.
come up here around them? I'm gonna get that first.